Well, hello and welcome to our webinar today. My name is Mark Graven. I am the VP of Improvement and Innovation Services at KaiNexus. And on behalf of our entire team, I would like to welcome you to the webinar today titled 4 Components of an Employee-Led Improvement Initiative. And joining us all the way from Australia are our 2 presenters today, Benny Ausmus and Simon Murray, both of a firm called Big Change Agency. Benny is the CEO and lead facilitator. Simon is program director. And we're very excited about the webinar today. We've been really pleased at KaiNexus to be partners with Big Change Agency as they work with clients to help improve and create that culture. And we're really excited that they're going to be talking about that today. I'll let them introduce themselves and their firm in a little bit more detail when we get started.
Thank you, Mark. Great to be here. Hello, everybody. My name is Benny Ausmus. I am the CEO and lead facilitator of a company called Big Change Agency. We're based in Melbourne, Australia, and we also have an office in Jakarta, Indonesia. So a little bit about myself. I specialize in culture shaping, culture change, and driving employee engagement by using leadership development at all levels in a business. Coming into organizations, coming into building programs of improvement, I take the approach of facilitating the development of people to be able to carry that improvement through the business. So that's a little bit about me. Simon, tell us about you, please.
Thank you, Benny. Simon Murray here, Program Director at Big Change. And my speciality within Big Change and the programs we run is around the technical process improvement. So whereas Benny's focus is very much around the people element, once we have an engaged workforce, that's when I come in and start working with the people to streamline the process and implement, sometimes it's traditional lean tools, sometimes it's just very, very basic process improvement projects.
Thanks, Simon. So Big Change is really all about increasing profits, increasing productivity while improving culture. And we find that when this is integrated, when we take an improvement focus wrapped up in a culture shaping initiative, a culture change initiative, we get these sustainable results that compound through the business and they become generative, they become taught, they become the language of the business. So today we're going to be taking you through our 4 components of an employee-led improvement initiative. We're going to be sharing some of our secrets. We're going to be pointing out what we've noticed really works in organizations well, and we'll be, of course, open to questions at the end to answer anything that you might have on your mind. So, what we've noticed with lean programs, with efficiency programs, Six Sigma, Kaizen, whatever you'd like to call it, what we've noticed is when we see these programs rolled out in business, that the vast majority of these programs actually don't create a great result. We're finding that, and this is data according to McKinsey and Company, that more than 60% of Six Sigma programs fail, 70% fail to achieve their savings targets, 80% of companies are not achieving expected value from lean. And the reasons for this are largely because, well, 33% because management behavior does not support the change. So no big surprises there. But the surprising fact here is 39% of this failure is attributed to employees being resistant to the change, resistant to bringing in new processes, new ways of doing things. So the biggest reason for failure of these programs is the employees' lack of engagement. So the ultimate irony is that these programs that are supposed to increase efficiency, supposed to increase productivity, supposed to make things easier, are actually creating more waste than they save. They're pulling, employees into classrooms and teaching them tools that they're not actually using to improve the business. So we're looking at, you know, these figures from McKinsey, 80% of companies not achieving expected value, and we're asking, what's going on here? Why is this resistance happening? And how do we improve this? How do we make this something that is engaged, that is driven? And the answer to this, we're finding, is making it employee-led and management championed. So what is an employee-led initiative? Well, look, when we talk in terms of this, a lot of people will use the terminology, it's a bottom-up approach. It's not a bottom-up approach. It's an approach that's sponsored, supported, and championed by the leadership team. So you have these champions at an executive or at a senior management level that are on board with bringing this through the business. They are prepared to trust their employees to make changes, to take small risks, to hand that over. And that's a big deal. It has to come from the top, of course. Secondly, the employees are fully engaged and constantly push leadership to support new initiatives. So employees at all levels of the business are trained and encouraged and coached to constantly push up with enthusiasm and with fresh ideas to improve the business. There's daily meetings and improvement projects that are led by the employees, not led by the supervisors or managers. They're led by the people that are on the shop floor and the front line running the business day to day. And employees at all levels have the opportunity to be leaders in their own way. So what we mean by that is you can take Simon Sinek's definition of that there are people who lead, people that take the initiative to influence and impact change in others around them. But to make this work really well, you need to focus on developing people's sense of trust and initiative, and move the model of thinking from the traditional command and control style of management over to this new trust and track style, where you're fostering a culture of trust. You're giving people the empowerment to be able to lead in their area or their role, and you're encouraging that voice to come out. So that's what we're talking about as far as an employee-led initiative. So let's share a bit of a case study. This is Chobani yogurt, very big in the USA. They also have a presence in Australia. Simon, can you take us through the Chobani case study, please?
Sure. Thanks, Benny. So there's a link there to a case study video which you'll find on our website, which will give a bit more background around this. And in that video, there's some examples there of people at all level of the organisation talking about how an employee-led improvement program has helped Chobani in Australia. So a bit of background there. The Chobani Australia established themselves about 5 years ago, and they literally built the business from scratch. Last month they achieved the #1 yogurt maker in Australia, the #1 brand there. So it's been a huge journey for them over 5 years. Big Change started working with Chobani around 18 months ago, and they'd seen a change in management, and the new managers had identified that all of the business focus was on growth. You know, they were growing at a very, very rapid rate, and the new management team recognized that, first of all, this wasn't sustainable. The management structure was a very top-down approach, and the people on the floor, they'd lost all ability to make decisions themselves. So the management and the supervisory team were really, really stretched. So they looked at Big Change, and they chose Big Change because they had some very specific objectives in their improvement program. And some of these here you can see on the slide. So they wanted to align teams to common values and goals within the business. Now, Chobani has great values and vision, but not everybody in the business understood how they translated to their individual jobs. So not everybody was working in the same direction every day. They wanted to embed a continuous improvement and lean process in the day-to-day business. So if a big problem hit, they might apply a problem-solving tool, but it was quite rare. Rarely day-to-day was just about getting through the day and satisfying customer demand. There was really no focus on improvement. And while some people were aware of different lean tools and processes, they just weren't being implemented as they wanted. They wanted to engage staff and organise improvement initiatives. So again, the staff, they all knew they had to get the product out the door. There was a good culture there to start with. Everybody, you know, liked the brand. Everybody loved Chobani, but were they really engaged in why they were there? Just not enough. Chobani wants to provide their people a sustainable coaching and training framework. So they wanted training and coaching not to be ad hoc. They wanted real structure around this. They wanted everybody to know if they needed tools and new skills, there was an opportunity there to develop them. Supporting and accelerating leadership team strategic plans. Again, in a business that's growing as fast as Chobani, the strategic plans were, 18 months was a stretch because the business is just so dynamic. So in operating in such an agile environment, it was very, very important that the frontline teams could adapt and support the strategic plans for the next 6 to 12 months. And again, a lot of that was down to the communication and the engagement because they were changing so rapidly. And finally, they wanted to enable a culture where every employee understood and believed what continuous improvement was. So we come across, and we find this across every industry and many companies, that the real fear when we go into a business is that it's just change itself. People are often very, very reluctant just to change, or they think, hey, this continuous improvement program is a program with a defined start and finish. What Chobani wanted was for continuous improvement to be continuous, for everybody to understand that, hey, every day we're striving for something better. So some of the results that were achieved there, and these are over, let's say we've been working with them now for 18 months. These results, this case study was filmed about 6 months into the program. So average production line increases 23%, 50% reduction in customer complaints, and built capability with engaged frontline workers who were actually leading the improvement initiatives. So this is, yes, the numbers all went up, but lots of this was done from the frontline workers level. It was the frontline workers who were coming up with the ideas and who were implementing the initiatives themselves. Thank you, Benny.
Thank you, Simon. So how is this done? What is the model that we use for this? Well, look, what we'd like to share with you today is a puzzle that is, it can be used as a roadmap. It can be used as the language to look at these categories and to determine how we go about crafting an employee-led improvement initiative. So we'll start with a bit of a helicopter ride over the model. We'll look at the whole model in its entirety, and then we'll zoom in on each piece and discuss the details. So the model has 4 key elements. The first of which is purpose. Purpose deals with environment, culture, vision, mission. It's qualitative. It deals with the collective idea of who we want to become more of and who we are, what we're aligning to do, what our true north is. What is our shared sense of must. So that's the purpose category. It's very much in the space of why. We then have process directly under it. Now, process is quite quantitative. It's the what. It's systematic. It's systems and categories. It's marked by best practice and benchmarks and what is the best we've ever done, what's the gold standard goal for each system and process. And it's refined in the sense that it can be modeled across from other companies, from other success. So process. Then we have performance. Now, performance is the how and the do. How does the day-to-day performance, activities, tasks of each person fit into that process for the purpose. For example, performance will be real-time actual KPIs. Now, those real-time KPIs are fitting within a process. How did you perform today? What were the tasks? What were the results of those tasks? And finally, the last category, people. People, of course, is the who. Now, people, we have their mindset, their beliefs, their values, their decisions, their attitudes. Now, when we look at this model in its entirety, we're looking for alignment here. And this is really the puzzle that needs to line up at all of the edges to have a well-rounded, sustainable program. So in terms of alignment, we need to align the purpose to the people and the people to the purpose. So what I mean by that is within purpose, you need to have an actual shared sense of what it means to be part of this culture. Within people, that they have to share a mindset that fits with this purpose, that's aligned with the purpose. Also, with process and performance, the alignment here is critical. The alignment here will be the tangible results you get, the numbers you get. So how does the day-to-day activities and efforts of performance line to the best practice gold standard benchmark of process? So when we talk in terms of purpose, why, process, what, performance, how, and people, who, we're talking in terms of alignment and getting this working all together as a unit. So let's drill down into this. When we're looking at purpose, so purpose is the why. This exists to define a true cultural north in a way that everyone can connect, and we can make sure that connection is taking place. So examples of this are, yes, vision, where are we going? Mission, how do we get there? Values, how do we ride to get there? Standards, what are the unbreakable rules that are not negotiable, apply to everybody, that if we all did them all the time, we would reach our purpose. It's the shared common language. You can see the example of the One Chobani manifesto here. This was put together by the shop floor. This was put together by the people at the front line of the business. And it was facilitated. And a big point to make here with purpose is it needs to be facilitated. It needs to be a collective conversation. So it's no good pulling everybody together and saying, I'm going to tell you what your purpose is. You will obviously not get the engagement you're looking for there. What you can do is bring everybody together and say, look, we're going to have a conversation. We're going to share ideas. We're going to talk about what's most important to us, who we are, who we want to be more of, and how we're going to work together, how we're going to cooperate together. And from there, you can harness the collective knowledge and wisdom of the people and end up with an output like this manifesto. It's a summary of the insights from people in the business. Everyone has a sense of ownership around it. So the more people you can involve in this facilitation, the better. If they feel like they've come up with this and they own this, they'll be able to take that through the business and turn it into common language. So talking in terms of culture, culture very much comes from language and storytelling and consistently passing that through generations. So we want as much of that daily discussion to take place as possible, and facilitating that, not just set and forget doing it once, but making it part of the day-to-day is vital to carrying this through. And Simon will tell you more about this, this ongoing day-to-day conversation in process.
Thanks, Benny. So the next piece of the puzzle is, of course, is process. Now, I think just going back to that first slide, some of those statistics around the failure rates of lean programs, they're, in my 20 years as operational improvement, in looking at it, that Purpose, not defining the purpose to start with, is consistent across every failure, and that's one of the big differences in an employee-led improvement program, is having that purpose set first. So moving into process, we're going to talk more around what is seen as a traditional lean program or a traditional Six Sigma program. Now, when process, it's important to note, when process is put in without a clear, aligned purpose first, the business, the culture will reject it straight away. So anyone who's working, struggling to implement the gains they are expecting from a lean or a Six Sigma process, we would really encourage you to go back and look not at the process and the tools and the training. Go and look and see if that purpose and the alignment is set first, because that's likely where the fault is, not the training and the people. So into process. And what process is, when we get to this stage, I like to imagine if we've set and aligned the purpose well, what we have there is a highly motivated, aligned workforce who want to make the place better. So I often compare this to a sports team. You know, the setting the purpose is that first week of the season where everybody's rallying together as a team. Now, if we don't set a process around that sports team of a training schedule, what diet to eat, how often we play each week, the team can't win. There's no game for them. So setting the process in any business or any program, it really is what's there to enable collaboration and momentum. And what it gives everybody in the business is a real structure to actually keep the momentum of this continuous improvement program working. So what sorts of things are we talking about when we talk about process? Well, it's this structure of communication and activities that allows everybody to be involved in the program. Everybody in the business, from frontline workers all the way up to the CEO and the boardroom. So where we generally start is the daily stand-up meeting. For us, it's the foundation of every employee-led initiative, because everybody can attend. And the important thing around for us for the daily stand-up meeting, it's about having that discussion at every level of the business and asking the simple question of how can we make today better than yesterday? Just giving people, even people who are, fighting against improvement and change, because there'll always be the naysayers, even giving those the opportunity every day just to say, how can we make today better for you? It surpasses all of the benefits of most lean tools and most Six Sigma initiatives, because the people generally we find have the ideas. Just asking how do we make today better, people can give some good, valuable information. And if that morning meeting, that daily stand-up is in place and structured well, and people know, hey, I can raise my ideas and they will be worked on, that'll take this program a long way. So that's the daily stand-up meeting. Some of the other tools that we put in the process are improvement teams. So specific improvement teams looking at specific problems, but these are problems that have been identified by the floor. So identified by frontline workers, by the employees. So let's say, for example, we have the morning meeting. Operator raises his hand and says, this is the problem. In the true employee-led initiative, the supervisors and managers are able to rally an improvement team around that issue that was identified at the front line, bring together frontline workers, and actually consult, train, and facilitate to fix that problem with them. So the people who raise the issues are actually involved in fixing the problems. Often it doesn't need, and a great example here is Chobani, where in rolling out their employee-led initiatives, they were also empowering people at the front line. So what we were finding is lots of improvement suggestions that were coming up, lots of problems that were identified. They could be fixed at the front line. They didn't need manager or supervisor approval. They didn't need money to be spent. They just needed a little bit of communication, and they needed the frontline worker to be empowered to actually make the change. And the vast majority of the gains that were made in this program were by the leadership team having the confidence to allow the frontline workers to do the things that they knew were right. The third element that we've got there for really driving these initiatives are cross-functional teams. So bringing together people from different areas who would normally operate in silos, and having cross-functional teams working together, it just breaks those silos down. So we work with cross-functional teams in two ways. Sometimes they are, it might be a production worker with a maintenance person, with somebody from procurement, all working together on a specific project. But also what we like to do is create cross-functional teams of champions. As an example, at Chobani, we have cultural ambassadors, which is an ambassador for each area who talks about the culture each day, who helps support that. We have stand-up champions. So you can see here in this picture, the gentleman running that meeting is a line operator. But every week we bring together the line operators from each area who are trained to run these meetings, and they form these cross-functional teams for learning and sharing across the business. So while this is only a small team, a small part of the overall organization, these champions meet each week to actually support each other and drive further initiative through the business. Now, on the jigsaw piece, where purpose was implemented through facilitation, the process, this overall and arching structure, is put together through formal consulting. So it's really identifying from different industries and different businesses what's the best practice structure that will work in this business. So process comes from pure consulting. Thank you, Benny. Can I have the next slide, please? Thank you. So the third piece of the puzzle is around performance. So again, just going back to this analogy of the sports team, at this point now we've got a highly motivated sports team. They're all together working as a team. The training plan is in place. We're training hard each week. We're eating the right things, and we're playing the games. Now, the step here, the important part of performance, this is all about keeping everybody motivated. This is about how we drive people to actually stay motivated for the whole season. In business, the season, and in continuous improvement, the season lasts forever. So how do we create keep the momentum going and create, milestones where we can recognize achievement? And we do this through performances all around our measures and our KPIs. So Benny mentioned early on in purpose, as well as setting the vision, mission, values in purpose, we also set our big important goals. So these are our big important goals for the business or the department, and they're the quite high level objectives. What we do through the process then is we allow those measures and those big important goals to flow down to each department. So very similar to a Hoshin-Kanri process. But the difference here is obviously with a traditional Hoshin process, you've got KPIs flowing right the way down to the shop floor. And we do that. And what we find though is if we're only talking about the business KPIs at that frontline level, it's difficult to keep the engagement up. So what we look at working with the frontline workers and the employees with is what are the KPIs that are only within your control. So we talk about lead lag KPIs. We actually call them result and action KPIs. So for each area and each daily meeting and each board, we have our result KPI. We talk about what happened yesterday. So it might be line rates, it might be quality complaints, or it might be safety performance. Were there any injuries? And that's important to know because if the result is red or there's a gap, we need to work out how to improve that. But the real consistent improvement and the real momentum and the real opportunity for the employees to keep these programs running comes from what we call the action KPI, which is our lead measure. So it's what action are you going to take today to achieve a better result? Now that's a very small play on the language, but what we find is when we're talking, and often in the manufacturing environment, we're working with people English maybe a second or a third language. Education levels vary, significantly, and the concept of lead lag can be quite difficult for people to understand. Whereas result KPI, action KPI, the word actually says what it is. So we focus heavily on what is the action we're going to take today to drive a better result. So within all of these KPIs, we use a couple of different methods to display them. So we utilize whatever is the most relevant tool for where it is. So at the daily stand-up boards, everything is paper-based. It's the KPIs, the results are handwritten on, and they cascade all the way through from the daily meeting at frontline all the way up to the senior leadership team's daily stand-up as well. We also bring in, and this is where we utilize at Chobani, we utilize KaiNexus very heavily, is there's just so many ideas being generated. How do you manage all of that across the business? At the moment, I think we're up to, the business is up to close to 500 ideas in over the last 3 months, 300 completed, and we've got about 200 open ideas at any time. So it's how does all that get tracked? And for that, we bring in technology, and in this case, it's KaiNexus. But again, even though it's digital, it's still very much visual for everybody in the business. So the visual boards, everybody is engaged in it. It's not a case of the frontline employees only get to see what's on their board. They have access to all of the technology as well. So to summarize, performance is all about everyone having a game they can win. It's about where is the sports team on the league table? How did we perform this week? How are we going to perform in training today? And that's the type of discussion that we're having every day with performance. And performance is purpose is consulted, purpose is facilitated. Sorry, process is consulted. Performance is implemented through formal training of people. So it's educating them in what are KPIs? How do we set our KPIs? How do we set meaningful KPIs? So the training piece around that is in educating everybody in the business in how to use numbers and metrics for improvement. Thank you, Benny.
Thank you, Simon. So the final piece of the puzzle, arguably the most important piece, is people. It's the who. When people development and coaching is brought into a business, it's most effective when delivered in a framework of the broader environment. So what I mean by that is when we have this model in place, we have a shared sense of purpose and environment. We have a set process and rhythm of communication and system. We have training in how to perform and how to achieve. Then we're able to address people. We're able to work with people on each of these areas. So people is really the piece of the puzzle that brings all of this together. And it's very much around working with their leadership capabilities, their self-management capabilities, their communication with themselves and other people in the business. So we're talking in terms of mindset. We're talking in terms of helping them figure out their best behavior, choose their attitude. We're very much in the coaching space here, which means sessions using questions from the framework to help people figure out if they align, help people know where their gaps are. So the engagement happens when we align people to this purpose. If a person's personality doesn't match the company's culture, the company's values, the shared identity of the company, well, it's one or two things. It's either the company has got their sense of purpose and values wrong, or haven't got a very good hold on what that is and how to communicate that, or it's that the person potentially isn't suitable for that company or that role. So again, crafting this alignment between people's real day-to-day changing attitudes and mindset and that point that drifts with people with this purpose, with this shared collective purpose. We're able to look at this model now and see where the challenges are. A question or a comment that I hear a lot in business is, you know, it's so hard to get good people. You know, if only we could get better help. They'll say, you know, it's just so difficult for us to recruit people into our organization. And of course, the first question we ask is, well, tell me about your culture and your purpose and the environment. And they'll either describe a place where people are brought into an environment that continually talks about why, continually talks about what's important and who they are and how they behave together. Or they'll just say, yeah, we you know, have a culture that happens itself. Also, I'll say, tell me about your processes, your systems. And they'll either describe really strong drumbeat systems that are consistent, that give everybody a game they can win, or, you know, a little bit messy and all over the place. And then I'll finally ask them about their training. How do you train people in those systems? How do you champion their performance? And after they've answered this, only then do we look at people. Only then do we say the person might not be a match. So we need to look at all of these elements, and we can now see where the challenges are. Is the challenge actually a cultural challenge? Is it a process and systems challenge? Is it a performance and training challenge? Or is it a people challenge? And where do we focus the effort on change? So putting all of this together in this model, it is aligning these four elements, and they're really dimensions of thinking. When we can give ourselves the aerial view or the map of this and look at each of these four areas, it really helps our thinking in discovering what we really need to do the most work on. So a question I'd put to everybody on the webinar is, where do you see your gaps? The purpose is going to be your environment. Do you consistently communicate vision, mission, values, standards, big important goals to the point where it's common language, to the point where it's the daily conversation, to the point where it's how people talk to each other? That's what we're looking for in terms of purpose, because the purpose and environment will either support or sabotage the process. We want it to support the process. So the next question, are your processes consistent? Are they the best practice for your purpose and environment? Do you have your daily stand-up consistently? Do you have improvement teams? Do you have a communication process that is consistent? Because consistency builds trust within the environment. Next question, performance. Is there great training? Is there visual dashboards? Is there a game everyone can win? Are you tracking the day-to-day? Do people go home and know if they had a great day or if it was a challenging day? Is there a way of knowing what success looks like every day and a way of training people to achieve that success each day? And finally, coaching. Are you coaching people in terms of their mindset? Are you encouraging people to lead in the business? Are you working on matching their individual goals with the big important goals of the business? So this is the model. It's a model we use to guide our way through. And a lot of people will look at this and think, you know, is it a puzzle? Is it, you know, a step-by-step way of going through? Which brings us to the final point. It's integrated. And I believe this is the most important point when using this model in your initiatives and in your work. Each component exists in all the components. So you need to keep all of this going at once. You don't just do purpose. You just don't do culture in a workshop and expect that to be the way it is. The culture, the purpose conversation needs to be baked into the process. So what I mean by that is within process, there is the ongoing culture conversation. There is the ongoing performance conversation. There is the ongoing coaching of the people and bringing them in to this framework. So each component is integrated. You need to make sure that the plates keep spinning. You need to also use this model to be able to direct your efforts, to be able to know where the gaps are. So a great thing about this model is you can take a step back and identify where the challenges and problems are coming from. You can look at it with very clear eyes and say, is this a cultural problem? Is it a purpose problem? Is this a systems problem? Is this a performance and training problem? Or is this a people and personality problem? Most people default to it's a people and personality problem, which is not really the case most of the time. So each of these areas requires ongoing attention. Nothing is set and forget. The best thing you can do, the best gift you can give your organization is to invest in developing people in each of these areas. Yeah, you want people really understanding this so well that they're able to teach it to others. So the absolute goal of this is each one to teach one. It's generative knowledge in the culture. It's your frontline workers, your supervisors, your managers teaching other people how to keep this going, how to drive this initiative, and how to make the changes continue in the business so it's sustainable. So thank you. Thanks for listening. Mark, over to you.
All right. Well, thanks again, Benny and Simon, for sharing your approach and some of the examples and stories from Chobani and the rest of your work. So I would encourage people to continue submitting questions. We've got a good, healthy time for Q&A here. Benny and Simon's email addresses will also be on the slide that we leave up during the Q&A period. If you could advance that for me, please, Benny. And go ahead, one more. While we're waiting on questions to come in, we have a few announcements. We're still working on the webinar plans and program for 2018. The plan is to still do webinars every month throughout the year. So you can stay tuned to learn more about that at KaiNexus.com/webinars. If you're on our different email lists, you'll receive notification about those. But in the meantime, Greg Jacobson and I are going to be doing another Ask Us Anything. This will be episode 17 in this series. On January 9th, we do about a 30-minute live video chat where we answer questions that have been submitted through our KaiNexus community. So you can register for that and submit questions via our website at KaiNexus.com/webinars. You can also find past episodes of this series on YouTube. Okay, if you could advance again, please. We have some other resources. If this is, let's say, the first KaiNexus webinar that you've attended, we have a library of on-demand webinars that you can go and view at your leisure. I should go and count them. It's a couple of dozen webinars over the last couple of years. You can find those. There's a link on the right-hand side of the KaiNexus.com/webinars page. And I would also invite you to check out our blog at blog.kainexus.com. Okay, next slide. And the last thing you can check out is our KaiNexus podcast. So if you enjoyed what you heard today and you'd like to listen to it again as a bit of a recap or refresher, you can listen to the audio. It'll be posted in our KaiNexus Continuous Improvement podcast feed. We do previews of webinars. We have other content in the podcast feed. You can find that at KaiNexus.com/podcast. You can also find it through iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, and any place you might normally find podcasts. All right, if you can advance it once more. We'll have everybody's contact info here, and bigchangeagency.com website. So let's see, I'm going to clear out just a couple comments here. Great job today, good information, thanks, loved it, thank you so much. So we encourage people to also fill out the feedback survey that will come up here at the end of the webinar. So let's start with this question. You talked about the manifesto and developing that at Chobani. Can you talk a little bit more about some of the details around how much effort, how much time, how many people were involved in that conversation? I love the idea of not telling, but talking to people. How much time was involved? Was there a concern that this would be too time consuming?
Yeah, great question. Look, it is always a concern that how long will this take, particularly in an efficiency program. The manifesto was crafted over 2 3-hour sessions, I believe. Thinking back, we brought in, first of all, people working on the front line, around a dozen people on the front line, and about a dozen managers as well. And in this session, we got them to talk about what was most important to them, what behaviors they wanted to see, what attitudes did they want to see more of in the business, and we put it all up on a whiteboard. So we had very, very inductive thinking and just got all the ideas and jumbled them up on a whiteboard, and then we looked at themes and patterns in that session. And what we ended up with was a list of these statements. And then we took this into another session and got all the frontline operators from every area that were available at that time, and we showed them what everyone had come up with. We shared it with them. We got them to tweak it. We got them to put their own spin on it. We got them to look at it and say, oh, I agree with that. I don't think we can do that. So it was another iteration, and it changed slightly, and everybody else got a say. Then we did a final session where we brought everybody that hadn't been there through, showed them what we were planning to do, and got their input as well. So everyone was given the opportunity to be heard in the process, and I think it took a total of 6, maybe 7 hours of total time to craft that. Where it got brought into the day-to-day was now every single day they pick an item off it and use that as fuel for a story or a conversation at their stand-up meetings.
If I can just add to that, Mark, I think people often approach these types of exercises thinking it's going to be huge and it's going to take forever. The fault there is usually that it's approached thinking we've got to make it perfect. And you don't, it's everyone had an input into this, but it's a changing dynamic document. It doesn't have to be the same forever. It's particularly at Chobani, I think there's 20% of the workforce at the moment has been with the business for less than 6 to 7 months, so they weren't involved in the initial process. So in the next few months, the whole process will go through that again and establish what are the words and the themes that are important to the business now, because every business changes constantly. So it's very important not to approach something like the manifesto as hey, this is going to be with us for 3 years or 5 years. It's this is what we need to do for the next 6 to 12 months exercise.
Well, great. Thank you for addressing that question. We have another question here. I'll go to this one from Matt. What is your approach with employees that want you to just take an idea they have for improvement and do something with it, with little to no involvement by the one who submitted the idea, yet they want feedback and oftentimes feel like the idea that they submitted absent feedback was lost or forgotten about? Now, I'll kind of build on that. I heard about this as a challenge just yesterday at a hospital here in the US, that sometimes frontline hospital staff were afraid to bring an idea forward because some of them didn't feel like it was a plus to have ownership of the idea, that they were busy, and there was still kind of an old habit of wanting their manager to solve everything for them. What are some of your thoughts of how that can be addressed?
Yeah, it's a fantastic question. So using the model we've discussed today, you can tackle that. You can look at it and say, okay, are we creating a culture that really is encouraging people to own their ideas and to, get involved in initiatives. So looking at it from a purpose point of view, do we have conversations, and are we building a culture where people, want to spend a bit of time improving the business, want to learn new things? So you can look at it from a cultural point of view, or you can look at it from a people point of view. Is this person within the business really there to improve the business? Are they a match for the program? Or you can look at it from a process point of view. You can say, is our process around this, half of the people that bring up ideas will just bring up valuable ideas and do nothing with them, and the other half will get involved in implementing them in the project, and you can accept that into the process. So it really depends on the environment you want to create. You might find that it's useful to have people bring up the ideas but not follow through, if that's the culture and the environment you want. You might find that it's far easier to focus on people that want to do these projects, that want to take the initiative, that want to, be seen and advance in their career by being engaged and involved, and go that way. The danger is, of course, if you make it mandatory, standard operating procedure, that if you come up with an idea, you have to see it through to completion. Well, unless you've got a culture of super driven improvement people already, you're going to lose a lot of ideas that could be quite valuable. Mm-hmm. So just a few thoughts on that, Simon.
Yeah, I think I always like to ask as well why they don't want to be involved in the solution. Have they been burnt in the past? Have they started an improvement that didn't work out as they thought, and then they got punished for it? Or have they tried to do something in the past and they didn't have managerial support? So often there's an underlying theme as to why they don't want to go down that road, and it's that's not uncommon at all. And I think coming back to your reference for yesterday there, Mark, where the person thought it would be more work for them to actually implement this idea, comes back, I think, to that that level of managerial support and sponsorship and being able to free people's time up to do these things. I think if you've got a culture where, hey, I've got this idea, but it's going to be more work to implement, and the business, to me that sounds like a culture where the person doesn't feel the business is necessarily supporting them in the process. Mm-hmm. So I think it always, it comes back to why. What's the why? Why don't you really want to follow through with this? Yeah. And sometimes it's a little bit of it needs almost that concierge treatment with certain people. It's it might be the supervisor. We've had plenty of examples there, even in Chobani, with this is my idea, I don't want anything to do with it. And sometimes just having that one-on-one with the person, as with the supervisor, saying, how can I help you? Can you lead this initiative for me? It's given them that sense of responsibility, and also a safe environment to work in.
Yeah, and then this organization yesterday was certainly working on trying to create that culture where leaders are supporting the employees. And I think sometimes that takes time. And like you said, asking why, understanding each individual's perspective is important. It's not that they're bad people, but they have reasons to be cautious, maybe. Or if we can work on those issues, we can engage people and change the culture over time, as opposed to flipping a light switch. A couple other questions around people and time. Here's one. Do you have advice on how to identify champions, both from management and the frontline workers, identifying people to be part of daily stand-ups and improvement teams? They're finding challenges in getting people engaged, particularly in mid-level management. What are your thoughts?
Sure. Look, how we typically go about this is we get as many people in a room as possible. We share with them why we're doing this, what our purpose is, to improve culture over time and to increase performance and productivity. So we share that. We share why the company is doing this, and we say who would like to be involved. we ask the question, and the people that will put their hand up for this, you know, generally do so because they're going to get to train with you and to get some development and learning resources. They'll do it because they want to advance in their career, and they'll do it because, you know, they want to improve the business. So look, in getting champions involved, the best place to start is an awareness session with a message of purpose passionately delivered, and then just saying, hey, who wants to do more of this? If you're getting donuts when you're asking that question, then would be the time to go into individual sessions and really figure out why people aren't up for this, because there's a broader, you know, toxic issue there that you might have to address.
Sure. All right, let's try maybe squeeze in a couple more questions before the top of the hour. Ramesh asked, it's a challenge to create time, investing in coaching and training, taking time out of your regular work is a challenge. What are some of your thoughts on how we can approach that problem?
Cool. Hi, Ramesh. Thank you for the question. So how we approach this problem is we don't trade on time, we trade on value. So, you know, again, when we looked at the ultimate irony of lean and improvement initiatives being inefficient, we really need to look at what's the quick wins we can get. So if you're trying to dedicate more time to this, you really have to find the fastest way to produce a tangible result. So when we come in, yes, we're doing culture work, and as Mark was saying, that takes a long time to finally take culture through the business. But we're making wins all the time. We're making daily improvements. So time comes, you can get more time if you're demonstrating value. So really focusing on every session has to have a tangible output, some sort of increase, some sort of measurable improvement that then you can report up, or you can justify to yourself why you're spending this time, because we can't actually manage time. There's only 24 hours in a day. We can only manage ourselves and our use of time, and how others see that resource. So I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, I think it's very important, particularly on time. And obviously, we work a lot in manufacturing, and we're also, you know, we're very conscious that our training sessions are not the biggest cause of downtime in a program. And the philosophy we follow is, what problem on the line or at the front line is the training trying to solve? So we will never train somebody in a tool and then send them out to try and find the problem. We must identify the problem first. So for example, if you have an issue around changeovers, we identify that's the problem and we train the people in quick changeover. We would never train people in quick changeover and then say, go and see if you can fix your changeovers. So the problem must always come first, and then you will see, as Benny said, the value and the results will come much, much quicker.
Well, I think that's a great lesson, and as we wrap up here, that's a lesson that I think applies in any setting, not just manufacturing, of not just running around looking to use tools, but identifying problems that matter to people and improving the business and improving results. So thank you for sharing some of your thoughts on that and some frameworks that I think people will find very useful. So again, our presenters today have been Benny Ausmus and Simon Murray from Big Change Agency. Thanks to the both of you for presenting today. I would encourage everyone, check out their website, bigchangeagency.com. If you want to follow up with them, their email addresses are there on screen. And I would encourage you again, please do fill out the feedback survey that will appear at the end of the webinar. So I want to thank everybody for attending. Benny and Simon, thank you again for joining us and sharing everything with us today.
Thank you, Mark. And thank you, KaiNexus. It's been a pleasure.